Welcome to Beyond the Pod, presented by SodaStick.com.
Brunette, he moves, Brunette back in, he scores! Minnesota has upset the Colorado Avalanche! Andrew Brunette, the game-winning goal!
Here are your hosts, the second greatest scorer in Gopher hockey history, Pat Micheletti, and the second greatest hockey analyst on this podcast, Brandon Mileski.
Yes, it's another episode of Beyond the Pod. I'm Brandon Mileski, Pat Micheletti with me. Beyond the Pod is brought to you by SodaStick.com. Hi, Pat.
Hello, Brandon.
Plenty of Wild discussion today, and obviously when we want to talk Wild, we got to talk with one of my favorite people in the entire world. He's live out in San Jose as we speak. His name is Kevin Gorg from Valley Sports North. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, gentlemen. Always good to be with you guys.
I was just thinking, that you're out in San Jose, we're taping this on Thursday morning before the Wild play the Sharks tonight. And I was just thinking, I really don't know anything about San Jose other than its geographic location. I'm obviously aware of where it is on the Pacific Coast in California, kind of near San Francisco, but I don't know anything else about San Jose. So what can you tell me about San Jose? What do you like about it? Where does it rank among all your visits you have on your travel?
Yeah, it's a techie area, right? I mean, there's a lot of technology out here, and it's a cool spot. It's one of my, for sure, top 10 because it's warm weather. It's a fun building. They got a great fan base here in San Jose. The building's always got some energy to it. And then we stayed in an area called Santana Row. And think of Edina on steroids. It's a great little shopping area with some cool restaurants. It's where all the beautiful people hang out. Trust me, if I was on my own dime, I wouldn't even be near here. Like I'm looking for like Joe Bag of Donuts Hotel, which is right down the middle of the fairway, $100 a night. Let's move on. But I get to compete with the Wild. So I'm at this cool spot, and there's a great little movie theater that I went to last night. And it's a fun spot for us. Anytime you can stay in an area where there's a lot of different places to go walking, we never have cars. And so this is one of my favorite spots for sure.
What'd you see last night?
For the second time, I saw House of Gucci. Some coworkers had not seen it. I recommended it. They're like, would you see it again? I'm like, absolutely. I'm such a Lady Gaga fanboy. And I actually liked it better the second time because the first time I saw it, Mick, was Thanksgiving night with my family, and the tryptophan had kicked in. And honestly, it's a good movie, but I was dead tired. Last night, I really got into the story more and kind of the history of the Gucci family, and that's kind of what this movie's all about. So I really enjoyed it.
All right, KG, we're 25 games in. Obviously, I think there's lots of different elements of the teams that has been maybe a little bit surprising. What's been the most surprising thing to you 25 games in?
The blue line, without a doubt. I factored in how valuable Ian Cole and Carson Soucy were last year. I was scared to death of them not being back this year, knowing now that Jared Spurgeon's missed a third of the season, and we're sitting here where the Wild are right now, playing the type of hockey they're playing, coming off a game where they went 5 for 5 against McDavid in the number one power play in the league on the penalty kill. I'll be the first to admit I did not see this coming, and I have been taken back by how well the blue line has played.
Kevin, a lot of people, it's the word to use, okay? Fans say it, the management says it, players say it, blah, 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 blah. The word culture, all right? And the culture with this team. First of all, explain culture. And then second, do you see, you're around these guys all the time, on the road, at home, in the locker room, everywhere. Do you see a different, and you don't have to name specific players, but just an overall difference in the way they operate, act, all of that combines culture?
I think culture is a feel, right? As players and coaches, we've all been a part of hockey teams, and it's such a unique game where, people throw around the word chemistry too, Mick, and you can't really draw it out and show people what chemistry is, but you feel it and you know it when it's there. And I'm going to be the first to tell you that some of the players that aren't here were some of my favorites to cover and were as good to me as any players have been in my 16 years of doing this. But in team sports, sometimes you need to mix things up. And it was clear that this team needed something different. And Bill Guerin saw that and felt that. And so I'll just say this. I've been doing this since 2006, and we're only a quarter of the way plus through the schedule. I've yet to see a team enjoy each other this much. Now, a lot can change in the grind that is an 82-game schedule, but I'm talking training camp, I'm talking preseason, I'm talking through adversity, bus rides, locker room. We are around everything.
Right.
And these guys genuinely love to be together. And I'll give you a small example that ties into this road trip. So yesterday was an optional skate in Edmonton. And as typically would be, about half the guys skated. But every guy showed up to the rink. And then all the guys congregate together in the room, grab a bite to eat together. There were some delays with our travel getting out of there, which tends to happen when you're leaving Canada now. And just seeing the way these guys enjoy being around each other, it is different. It feels different. And certainly I think if you talk to the players from the leadership on down, the way the coaching staff handles the team, the way the leaders in the room handle this team, I just think there's less we're in charge and more we're all in this together. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. KG, I'm going to go back to the blue line here and talk about Jonas Brodin. He's a guy who's always been a little bit in the shadows of Ryan Suter and Jared Spurgeon, though I think all three of us, at least know how good defensively he is and how good of a puck mover he is. This year, he seems to be even a little bit more aggressive offensively. You saw the play the other night in Edmonton that he set up Victor Rask on. What's been the difference with him compared to where he was a couple of years ago? And how many defensemen in the league right now would you take over Jonas Brodin?
Not many. Makar in Colorado might be the one that stands out, obviously, because of his age. But as far as just who they are right now, if you watch this team on a regular basis, which we all three do, good luck trying to find somebody out there that can defend like this guy can defend. And I think it's become more of a spotlight situation with Spurgeon on the sidelines, because now Dumba and Brodin have been playing elevated minutes and been doing it against the league's best players, and they've flourished. Yep. This kid now has the confidence. This has been a topic of conversation on our broadcast now for over a month, and all of our analysts from Gigi Marvin to Wes Walls to Ryan Carter brought it up. He is a different player right now than even we saw last year. And when we asked him and asked Bob Woods, who works with the D-man here with the Wild, the word I keep hearing is confidence. This kid has the confidence now to not just be a good defender of the puck, but to be a guy that likes to get involved in the rush and make plays. He's starting to understand that he's got good skills and can make plays. And you saw that the other night in Edmonton. You guys know with any young hockey player what confidence can do. And for Brodin, he's always kind of been I'm going to stay home guy. I'm going to stay in the shadows and just defend. And now I think he's seen his role change, and I think he's making the most of it.
Talk about kind of a lightning rod figure over the last couple of years, and I know Pat's going to roll his eyes when I say this one, is Victor Rask. 2 years ago, he looked like a complete epic failure of guy in the he's making $4 million a year and he's in the press box. Last year, obviously, he was the one guy who seemed to have some chemistry with Kaprizov and Zuccarello. This year, he's been in and out of the lineup, but when he's in the lineup, he's contributing offensively. Had a good game the other night in Edmonton. How do you evaluate Victor Rask and his role on this team and what he's going to be doing here moving forward the rest of this year?
Well, for me, he is the most intriguing guy because we don't really know him. And I got to tell you, he's a guy that doesn't share a lot. And if you watched his reaction after the goal, we were chuckling with Dean Evison after the game about, he doesn't really celebrate. He just kind of goes, oh, okay. But I think that personality trait has helped him, Brandon, throughout this time with the Minnesota Wild, because he has been shuffled around. And even when he's played well, he's been put in the press box. And if it was a guy that kind of rode the emotional roller coaster, he might have crumbled. But he's a guy that honestly doesn't seem to be fazed by any of this, good or bad. He doesn't take his success too seriously. And when he's demoted, it doesn't seem to faze him in the least. And when we watch him and how he reacts on the road, because sometimes when guys get sent to the press box, I mean, you guys know this, it bothers them immensely. With Victor Rask, he's robotic in his ways, but I believe in his role in this hockey team, that's a good thing because it doesn't become a distraction and it doesn't bring his game down a bit. So when he's put in there, and we talked about this, I thought Ryan Carter made a great point during our game over the weekend against Toronto. His first game back out of the press box, he's over a point a game, and he's scoring goals in these games. But don't you kind of feel like now, as you get to know this guy, like if he is that robotic guy, that's a good thing to have. It's an extra piece to have. It's an extra, again, he's a guy that can hop in, play center, and you can put him with guys that can play top-end guys, and he won't hurt you. game in, game out, we all know he has deficiencies in his game. We all know he's not the greatest player without the puck in the defensive end. Anyone who's watched the Wild gets that. But boy, I mean, if you're Dean Everson, to have that option and to have a guy that really doesn't seem to care either way and then just shows up and plays, probably a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, I'm the first to tell you, he's not a 20-minute a night guy. He's not a guy that's going to carry the load, but I just, I think when he first got traded here and how popular Nino was and all of that, and then the expectation, you saw him right away. You're like, what do we get here? Right. Mm-hmm. Guy had a bad ankle, couldn't skate, then didn't play. And then when he did play, probably wasn't 100%. So I think initially out of the gate, it was like, this guy's brutal, and it has stuck with him. And, I talk a lot about chemistry, right? And you did earlier, Kevin, and what he and Kaprizov and Zuccarello did last year, was, quite remarkable. Now, Rask is he's not going to be that big point producer for you, right? But he gets in the right spots in the offensive zone. Case in point, the other night, the last couple goals he scored, he gets in the right spots. Not the greatest skater in the world, I'm not the Rask defender. I just think people are a little bit too hard on the guy. Is my basic point.
I can't argue that. Yeah, I think if you're going to have a 12th or 13th guy that can play forward occasionally and can slot into spots where you might have some injuries or some guys out, I think it's a pretty good scenario for the Minnesota Wild to have that depth. We always talk about that word when we cover this team, whether it's your guys' show or our broadcast. The depth is something that comes up a lot. Well, he's a part of that depth, and like him or not, the guy can make plays. And if you're going to have a guy that doesn't become a distraction, that doesn't pout when he gets sent to the press box and answers the bell when he's called upon, it's a good thing for this hockey team. So I get the people out there see the same things we see. He's not the greatest skater, doesn't play great defense, but to have a guy that can hop in and help out offensively when you're certainly through the course of the long season, you're going to have some key players out of the lineup. You already have, and you will again. I think you want that depth, and I think you need it.
All right. Let's speculate a little bit here and then go back in history a little bit. And this is really tough because this team is rolling. You don't need to do anything right now. But let's look ahead. And let's say they finish first or second in the conference and, are moving along. Chuck Fletcher, how many years ago, made the deal when this team was first in the Western Conference. And they seem to have the good chemistry, seem to have everything rolling. Then he makes the big deal because they feel like, they needed somebody that could shut down Taves, right?
Yep.
And they get Martin Hanzal, and it didn't work out. But I think Brandon and I both applauded the fact that, hey, we feel like we can go for it. Let's do something. Didn't work out. So we look to today, and this team's got that chemistry. What do you think the team still needs to make a move to upgrade, and what position do you think that would be?
I would say this: a lot can change between now and the end of the year. We've still got 3.5-4 months of hockey to go. So the health of the team. Yep. The center position comes to mind. If Ryan Hartman can sustain anything close to what we're seeing, then cool. If not, then that's an area that I would take a look at. And then obviously for me, Cam Talbot really moves the needle for this hockey team. And I think Capo is developing, and I think that Capo certainly is a guy that the Wild are looking at it saying, hey, this might be the goaltender of the future. But if you're looking at right now, this year's team, if God forbid Cam Talbot got hurt, that would absolutely be something I would look at. What I love, you guys, and I mean this sincerely, and I know he's not listening or watching, so I'm not kissing up to anybody. Bill Guerin knows what a cup contender or winner looks and smells like from both a player's vantage point and a management vantage point. And I'm going to trust that he's going to make the right decision. And if you look at just the small sample size we have with this hockey team, trusting his gut on believing in Dean Evison when he probably had 3 or 4 guys on his short list already, but seeing what Dean was doing with this hockey team when Billy got here and saying, you know what, I've got my list, I've got my guys, but this guy is the right guy. And then the obvious moves he made in the offseason, which, to me, you talk about showing some guts. I mean, the owner is best friends with Ryan Suter. I mean, we all saw the Parisi one coming. That was happening. We knew that was happening. None of us knew the Suter thing was happening. And when Craig Leopold's thrown in the mix, the best friend of that player and business partner, my goodness. So I trust Guerin to make the right call then, but those are the 2 areas I would keep an eye on.
Yeah. And KG, what Pat was talking about with chemistry, when you look back at that Martin Hansel deal, I'm with Pat that I was for the team swinging for the fences and trying to hit a home run because the West was wide open that year. But from a chemistry standpoint, in hindsight, that did kind of throw off the chemistry where, Eric Halla was a big part of your team and he got sent down a line and demoted. Whereas I do think you could get a center on this team without throwing off your chemistry, right? Like Sturm is going to stay as your 4th line center. Eriksson Ek and that line is going to stay together. I guess if you went out and got a Claude Giroux type and put him between Kaprizov and Zuccarello, I'm pretty sure Hartman has the ability to move around and be able to play center with Kevin Fiala, and that's not going to throw off your team. So I'm with you on the backup goalie. I still ultimately am wondering if we need another defenseman, and which is kind of probably insane to say with how good they've been right now from a depth standpoint. But I think you could plug in a center and not throw off your chemistry. Yeah,
Ryan Hartman will play wherever you put him. And getting to know him the last couple of years, look at the contract he signed. Look at the way he's reacted even in the last couple of seasons. He's been as low as the 4th line, as high as the 1st line now. He's played wing. He's played center. He's played penalty kill. He doesn't care. He's a guy that if you just put him on the ice, he's going to go out there and do his job. He's going to do it well. He's going to work hard. So to your point, Brandon, 100%. If you bring in a center, nothing much is really going to change. It would certainly impact Victor Rask, but as I talked about earlier, I'm not sure that that's going to make a big difference in the room. Right. So, and as far as the blue line goes, if you get Spurgeon back on this trip, which we think we will, and if you don't have any significant injuries, and if Jordy Ben is your extra guy, and if Kalen Addison is waiting in the wings in Iowa, I don't know that you need to worry about that. I think the 2 areas you have to keep an eye on are for sure that center position, and then just keep an eye on the health of Cam Talbot, because if Cam Talbot goes down, I'm not saying Capo can't do it. I just think that you want somebody with some experience. Playoff hockey is different. It's really different for that position. Everything really gets magnified for goaltenders. And I think Talbot is the right guy right now for this hockey team. But that'd be my only real concern. I don't think this team, honestly, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you in the summer, I thought this team was the best team in the West. I thought this team was a playoff contender. I wasn't sure they were a cup contender. As we sit here now, just past the quarter pole, they've changed my mind. They have changed my mind. I think that aside from the obvious, which is the standings and the points, they've got something going on right now with this team. I'm telling you, watching these guys on a daily basis, they have got something special right now with the group they have. So I think Bill Guerin will be a little bit guarded to make any significant changes anytime soon.
Kevin, you brought up Hartman, and I want to bring him up again. Let's not forget about Hartman, right? 2 years ago when he signed here. I'm not saying he was almost out of hockey, but he didn't have many suitors when he was a free agent. And Paul Fenton needed somebody, needed another body to come into camp. And, it is certainly, you want to talk about a guy with perseverance, I guess is what I'm getting to. He just has come in and, like you said, has done everything that they've asked, hasn't complained, played right wing, left wing, 4th line, 3rd line, 1st line. So we're talking about a steal right now, aren't we?
We are. If let's say he had signed a 2-year deal and his contract was up, Billy Guerin, the teeth chattering that Mileski plays on his radio show with Common, we'd all be doing the teeth chattering because he'd be gone.
Right.
And his point was, and we've talked to him a couple times about this, is he was tired of moving around. He really likes it here in Minnesota. He likes the guys that are in this locker room. And he said, I'm just tired of moving around. And he's a guy, he's an outdoor guy. He likes to hunt. He likes to fish. He likes to play golf. I mean, he is a perfect fit in this area away from hockey. He's a perfect fit in this locker room. And he just finally said, enough is enough. I mean, I'm really content with what I'm making here. I'm making good money, and I want to win, and I think this team can win. And it's refreshing to see a guy, and he knows now as he sits here on pace for 30-plus goals, maybe something close to 40, that he might have left some money on the table. But I'm going to tell you, he'll be the first to admit right now he doesn't give a crap. He doesn't care. He just wants to win and be on this hockey team. He seems to love it here, and I think that also helps him play his best hockey.
All right, KG, we have two former Wild coaches now coaching in the NHL again. Bruce Boudreau is coaching in Vancouver. Mike Yeo is the interim coach in Philadelphia. What were both of those two like to work with here in Minnesota, and do you see any success for either of them with their current situations?
Well, I'll just say this. I loved both of them. And they're both completely different guys. They're wired completely differently. I was heartbroken when Mike Yeo got fired. I knew it was coming, and there was nothing any of us could do about it. You talk about quality human beings that I've come in contact with in my professional life. He's right at the top. I mean, he is as good as it gets as a human being. I understand what happened there, and I'm excited for this opportunity for Mike. I'm not sure it's the right team at the right time. I watched that Colorado game specifically because Mike was behind the bench, and they don't defend, period. They don't. And they don't have the goaltender to make up for that lack of defense. So it's a problem. We've seen the results with Boudreau through a couple of games. Vancouver needed something. And all I'll say is this about the coaching change in Vancouver. We, the three of us, have a mutual friend that played for the Golden Gophers, that played NHL hockey, that ended up in Vancouver and is no longer there. You can fill in the blanks.
Yep.
I could see this one coming from the summer besed off a conversation I had with that particular player. The guys in Vancouver, I think, were beaten down a little bit. Brock Besser, who I'm not talking about, is a player I'm thinking about right now who had lost all confidence. I've been around Bruce. You guys have been around Bruce. In the regular season, when you make a coaching change, if you need a jump start to get a team that's outside of the playoff conversation and get them back in, I don't know that there's anybody better. After that, you're on your own. But I'm talking about a team that's beaten down emotionally, getting somebody that can pump them back up, get them playing the right style of hockey, and get them right back into the playoff conversation. I think it's a great hire. I think they'll get right back in there, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because you're talking about a Canadian team for the first time with Bruce Boudreau and the media access. I think if I'm Vancouver's PR guy, I better be on alert, because it's going to get really interesting. It's going to be great for all of us as fans.
Right.
It might not be great for the guys in Vancouver that are trying to harness that energy that Bruce brings every day to the rink. It's going to be unbelievably cool to watch.
Yeah.
Final question for you, KG. We just
I've got one more.
Oh, go ahead, Pat.
No, I just want your thoughts on Teddy Bridgewater and if they can get Denver in the playoffs.
I love Teddy. I do. Teddy, a likable young man for sure. No, the Broncos, my beloved Broncos.
You've got to be disappointed.
Yeah, I
mean, with the team overall.
I'm disappointed in two things. Number one, their defense hasn't lived up to the hype. They had to trade some of their key guys like Von Miller. The other thing I'm most disappointed in is in the offseason, you've got this star running back that you've drafted that's going to be the next Dalvin Cook in Javonte Williams. I'm going to bring it back to fantasy. He's great. Instead of jettisoning Melvin Gordon, the veteran who you do not need, and maybe keeping a guy like Phillip Lindsay, who's a perfect scat back to be the third down back.
Right.
You decide to go a backfield share and harness this guy all year. And now finally, when Gordon's out, we get to see what we could have had.
I did not want to get your blood pressure.
Oh, you've got me going now. You've got me going now.
Sorry.
I owe you.
KG, let me give you some positivity on the horizon, though, right? You look at that offense, and you mentioned the defense, which should still be good. You look at the offense, the skill position players are there. They got they're 3-4 deep at wide receiver. They got a good young tight end. You mentioned Javonte Williams. So, that is a perfect spot for a quarterback to move into in the offseason, because, if you're an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson, it looks like Russell's probably going to get out of that situation. Who knows where we're at with Aaron Rodgers? But if either of those two are looking to get out of where they are, to me, Denver might be the best spot in the entire league of a team that's got a good defense. You got all the skill position players. That's a good place to go to. And I think you might be a little bit happier come March than you are right now.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I think Aaron Rodgers is a jackass off the field, but as a Bronco fan, I will welcome him with open arms.
Yes.
We'll be doing the discount double check in Denver right off the hop.
Bring back those orange jerseys. And,
yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Final question, Gorg. We talk so much about the depth of the Wild. We just went 25 minutes without talking about Kirill Kaprizov and without the line of Foligno, Greenway, and Eriksson Ek.
That's a good thing, right? I mean, it's a good thing that we have so many talkers on this team. It's been such a fun ride. Sitting on the airplane, flying in from Canada yesterday, we had a little delay getting out of there, and you have time to kind of look around and appreciate where this team is right now. It's like, my goodness. I mean, I wish, honestly, I hate to say this, I wish we're a little later in the year because everything feels so good right now, but you got to trust it. You just got to say, you know what, this team's got it. Let them play it out. Let them have some fun. And, every night it's someone different. And that's what I've seen throughout this year. Heroes every night that pop up from anywhere. We saw that Rem Pitlick hat trick. You mentioned Victor Rask. We haven't seen Kevin Fiala be Kevin Fiala yet. No. And that's coming. I mean, he's been knocking at the door. I'm telling you, that's coming. You're going to see significant runs from him. And the bottom line is, I think this is such an entertaining team to watch, the style of hockey that they play. We just saw Kulikov cherry picking on the far blue line and go in for a breakaway and undress an NHL goalie. This is a fun team to watch. Yeah. They play an entertaining brand of hockey. So let's just embrace it. As Minnesota sports fans, we're so jaded, right? When's the other shoe going to drop? Maybe it's not going to drop. Maybe we're just going to have a great season and we're going to roll when we get to the playoffs. Let's just trust it. I know all of us have a little of that in our DNA, but I'm not going to let that happen. I'm just going to sit back and night after night, really appreciate what we've got to watch.
KG, you are the absolute best in the business. Always love chatting with you. We'll talk to you soon.
This has been awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, thanks Kevin Gorg from Bally Sports North. And before we move on to Pat Micheletti, you want to talk about SodaStick.com, our sponsor on Beyond the Pod. You go to SodaStick.com to get your original Minnesota sports-inspired goods. If you haven't seen the stuff yet, you got to check it out, especially with Christmas on the horizon here. All their apparel is screen printed here in Minnesota on super soft, super comfy shirts. You will love it, and we're going to hook you up with 15% off your next order. Use the code KFAN for 15% off. That is SodaStick.com, original Minnesota sports-inspired goods. Use the code KFAN for 15% off your next order. Pat, before we move on to maybe some college hockey stuff, is there anything with this Wild team that's been on your mind? Any talkers lately?
Well, I mean, there was the big rumor of a possible deal, to Vancouver. I think that will get set aside for a while, but no, I just think that they don't, they're in such a good position where they are in the standings. Everyone is playing pretty well. That Bill Guerin can just kind of sit back and let this team, continue to develop and continue to, do the things they're doing. And why upset the apple cart now? I wouldn't do anything. I think Kevin brought up a great point. You and I had talked about this before. As much as we think at some point in time, maybe that they'll acquire center. If Cam Talbot goes down, will this organization have the trust in Kakkonen where he can make a run, where he can play 10 to 15, maybe 20 games in a row, or something like that? That would be a concern. I think as we move closer to into January and early February, and teams start to understand, hey, we're not going to make the playoffs. We need to shed some salary. There'll be players available and goaltenders available. So I would just, as Kevin said, I'd keep an eye on that more than anything.
Yeah, no, I thought Kevin brought up a good point with that. And even the other night when we were watching the Edmonton game, I had a tweet about Victor Rask, Pat, that
yep.
And I'm with you where I'm not as, there's a lot of Victor Rask haters out there, and I think he's been a pretty
he's been fine.
He's been a serviceable center the last couple of years. I did watch that game though early on and thought to myself, I'm thinking of long term who we got to get through in the Western Conference playoffs to get to a Stanley Cup. And I look at Nathan McKinnon and I look at Connor McDavid, and I watched the game and I saw Edmonton, Dave Tippett putting McDavid out against Victor Rask and Fiala and Rem Pitlick over and over again. And, they weren't scoring, but they were, they were in the Wild zone a good portion of the time. And I did have concern for, well, if we have to play road games in the playoffs, that matchup is a little concerning to me, having to go against McDavid, or heck, if Eichel is available for Vegas at some point to come playoff time, or the big knockers in the Western Conference got some pretty big time talent at center. Now Victor Rask came out and he scored a goal in the third period, and he's produced offensively. That's still I don't think it's a major concern, but it's still kind of a minor concern, because I look at your other centers with Joel Eriksson Ek, Ryan Hartman, Nico Sturm. I'm not worried about those guys, being stuck on the ice against some of those.
No, and they are who they are, and they play where they are. And you're not going to play Victor Rask on your fourth line. It makes no sense. That fourth line is, has a job to do, and they do it well, right? Just as if you said to me, hey, well, let's try, Sturm up at the 1 or 2. He's not ready for that. And he doesn't have the skill set for it yet. Whether he can be or not someday, I don't know. But I agree with you 100%. If they want to take a next step, and look at the Blues when they won it. They acquired Ryan O'Reilly. I mean, what a pro, what a player. And he was your number one center. You need a number one guy. And not to say Ryan Hartman is not that guy, but you still, I don't think that he's at the level of the guys that you mentioned. Okay, so that being said, get a 1 in a 1A, whatever, to be your top 2 guys, so you have some strength, real strength up the middle. And again, do you have to do it now? Can you take your time and really find that guy and get the right deal? And that's why I think time is on the side of the Wild, at least at this stage of the season.
We've seen an extended run now with that line of Joel Eriksson Ek, Marcus Foligno, Jordan Greenway reunited. Now, let's be honest, over an 82-game season, Pat, there's going to be lulls. There's going to be times where this team's struggling to score offensively, or they're losing some games. Yep. And lines will get shuffled, and that line might get broken up. But I mean, long term, especially come playoff time, those three are together, right? I mean, I think we've established that now.
I think we have, and people want more out of Greenway, and they want more, and they want points, and they want goals. You know what? If that line does what it's supposed to do, and that's momentum change, and play heavy, and listen, Foligno's got 11 goals, right? Or not 11 goals. X got 9. That's 20 goals, and Greenway's got 2.
Yeah.
Sometimes, Brandon, as fans, we all look at point production. Well, some guys are not point producers. And in the NHL, you don't necessarily have to be a point producer. You have a certain role on a team. And if you are doing that role, hallelujah, right? Then that's what we asked you to do, and you do it. And so as long as Greenway, now, would we like to see him with more production? Of course. But if he's in there and he's manhandling and he's a force and he's not killing you defensively, that is an asset.
He's become one of your main penalty killers too.
And one of your main penalty killers. And that line, there's something about that line that the other team looks at and says, oh, God, we have to play against them. And that gets in the heads of some of those
lines.
And
it's the other team's best players too.
Yeah. Remember last year, one, I don't know, it was a comment from a player on the other team saying, man, that I got to, our line was out there against them all night. That really, so we can be a little too hard on players sometimes, I think.
No, you're right. All right, 2 college series to preview going into this weekend. Number 5, Minnesota Duluth against number 11, Denver. What can you tell me about Denver and what the Bulldogs have to do in this weekend?
Well, Denver is the least talked about team in the NCHC this year. They don't have. They've got some really, really good players, but they were kind of an afterthought when you thought of 1, 2, and 3, Duluth, North Dakota, and St. Cloud. People thought, those guys, and then there's a fight for 4th. But Denver has won I think 6 in a row. They did get swept early in the year by North Dakota, but their game has improved tremendously. UMD got swept last weekend by Northern Michigan. Now there's a little asterisk there because they were without their number 1 and number 2 goalie. They were without their top 2 defensemen and another forward. So they were very shorthanded, taking nothing away from Grant Potolny. He's got his team playing pretty well, but it just goes to show you why this year in college hockey is different. And we've talked about it before, because every team is older. They get the 5th-year senior that have the ability to return. So you've got teams that are much more mature and don't like losing on Friday night, or getting swept, I should say. And we have seen more splits in series this year than I think we've ever seen. I'm going to go back and look up the stat, but it is really, really hard in this league to sweep a team this season. And that's why I have
Don't the Gophers know that?
Yep. And that's why I've said from the get-go that I think there are 10 to 12 teams that could win it. Now, the 12th team may not be the best team, but on a particular night, they can win. And when you get to the playoffs in the NCAAs, you've got to run the table and you've got to win 2, 3 in a row, whatever it is. Yeah. And so I tell you, it's going to be a battle all the way to the end this year.
Mike Hastings has the number 1 team in the country right now, the Minnesota State Mankato Mavericks. They are at Bemidji. I think we've known how difficult that place is to travel to and a difficult place to play. What are you expecting from Mavericks and Beavers this weekend?
Low scoring, a battle, absolute battle. Hastings and Sartori are great friends and they love to beat each other. The Mankato doesn't change their game, right? They just don't. They defend, they bore you, and they've got great goaltending. I think they probably at one point in time they were giving up less than 20 shots a night. And when you're under 20 a night,
that's amazing.
It is truly amazing. And then you've got Bemidji, and all they do is battle 100% from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. And what they their goaltending may be a little suspect, new guy this year, but
which is rare for them.
Which is really rare for them, because that's usually one of their strong points. But I expect a really good series.
Pat, appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you next week on Beyond the Pod.
Sounds great. Thanks, Brandon.
All right, he's Pat Micheletti. I'm Brandon Mileski. This has been another episode of Beyond the Pod, brought to you by SodaStick.com. Use the code KFAN for 15% off your next order. It's a good stocking stuffer. Coming on up. We'll talk to you next week on Beyond the Pod. Bye.